moment that would change Adrian Hale's life arrived quietly, wrapped in the kind of stillness he rarely allowed himself. He had come to the private resort to escape the endless meetings, the non-stop demands, the weight of being the man everyone depended on. For the first time in months, he let the calm breeze settle against his face. The world felt distant, manageable, almost peaceful, until a soft, trembling voice cut through the quiet like a thread of urgency he couldn't ignore. "Sir, please help me." He opened his eyes slowly, expecting an assistant or staff member. Instead, standing only a few steps away was a little girl, no older than 7, her large teary eyes fixed on him with a desperate courage that didn't belong on a child's face. She clutched a small handmade bracelet in her shaking hands, as if it was the only thing holding her together. Adrian sat up straighter, surprised. Children were rarely allowed in this secluded area, and certainly never without supervision. She looked around nervously, then back at him, swallowing hard before speaking again. "My mom, she can't get up. I tried calling for someone but no one listened." Something about the way she stood, small, frightened, determined, pulled at a place in Adrian he had long forgotten existed. He had handled boardroom crises, multimillion-dollar decisions and global negotiations without blinking. But the plea of this child made his heart stumble in a way he didn't understand. He rose without another word. "Show me." She turned and began to walk quickly, almost running, her tiny sandals tapping against the stone path. And as Adrian followed her, a strange sensation spread through him, an instinct he hadn't felt in years. Something was about to shift. Something he couldn't control. Something that might change everything. The girl's hurried footsteps echoed through the quiet hallway, each tap carrying a tension that tightened around Adrian's chest. She didn't look back, not even once, as if afraid that slowing down might make everything worse. Her small hand trembled as she pushed open a side door leading to a narrow passage rarely used by guests. The moment the door creaked, a faint chill swept across Adrian's skin, warning him that whatever waited beyond it wouldn't be easy. The girl paused at the end of the corridor, gathering her breath, her tiny shoulders rising and falling. She pointed toward a modest room tucked away from the main luxury suites, a place Adrian had never noticed before despite owning the entire resort. That alone unsettled him. "She's inside," the girl whispered, her voice wavering but steady enough to show she hadn't given up hope. Adrian stepped forward and gently pushed the door. It opened to a dim room washed in muted morning light filtering through half-closed curtains. The air carried a quiet heaviness as if holding its breath. On the bed lay a woman, still and pale, her hand resting loosely over her stomach. Adrian's instincts sharpened. He approached carefully, assessing the scene with a precision he usually reserved for critical business decisions. The girl stepped beside him, clutching her bracelet, her voice trembling. "She didn't answer me. I tried everything." He turned to her and spoke softly, "You did the right thing coming to find help." But even as he said it, he felt an uneasy truth settle around him. This moment wasn't a coincidence. This child hadn't picked him by chance. Something deeper was at play, something he didn't yet understand. Adrian's mind raced as he carefully knelt beside the woman, feeling the fragile rhythm of her breathing beneath his fingers. The girl, whose name he still hadn't learned, stood close by, clutching the bracelet like a lifeline, her wide eyes never leaving him. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning, yet it felt as if the entire world had shrunk to this single, urgent moment. "Can you tell me your name, sweetheart?" Adrian asked gently, his voice low but steady. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Lila. Oh, my name is Lila." Her tone carried both fear and hope, a combination that struck a chord deep inside him. He realized then that this tiny human, smaller than most obstacles he had faced in life, held a courage he couldn't ignore. Adrian's gaze returned to the woman on the bed. Something about her face seemed vaguely familiar, yet blurred by memory, as if it were someone from a past he hadn't revisited in years. The soft rise and fall of her chest reminded him of vulnerability in its purest form, raw, unshielded, and demanding care. Without hesitation, Adrian pulled out his phone and dialed for help, speaking with precision and authority, giving every detail clearly so the responders could act immediately. Lila's hand found his as she whispered, "Thank you for helping us." Her voice was trembling but full of trust. In that instant, Adrian understood that success wasn't measured by wealth or power, but by the lives you could touch when it mattered most. And as he waited for help to arrive, a quiet resolve settled within him. He wouldn't let this child or her mother face this moment alone. Something far greater than coincidence had brought them together, and he was ready to face it. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air, but inside the room, time seemed suspended. Lila clung tightly to Adrian's hand, her small fingers wrapped around his with a quiet insistence, as if drawing strength from the presence of someone who seemed larger than life yet entirely human in this moment. Adrian felt an unfamiliar tension in his chest, a mix of urgency and responsibility he hadn't experienced even during the toughest boardroom battles. As the paramedics entered, their professional calm contrasted sharply with the raw emotion in the room. Adrian stepped back, letting them take over while keeping a careful eye on Lila. "She needs to stay with her mother," he said firmly. The paramedics nodded, trusting the conviction in his voice, sensing the bond already forming between him and the child. Lila's eyes met Adrian's again, wide and filled with questions she couldn't put into words. He knelt slightly to be at her level. "You're very brave, Lila. You did the right thing by finding me," he said gently. Her small nod, barely perceptible, seemed to lift a weight off her young shoulders. As they prepared to move the woman to the ambulance, Adrian noticed something striking. A resemblance in Lila's features that felt hauntingly familiar, a connection that tugged at memories he had buried deep within. His heart quickened, realizing this wasn't just a random moment of fate. This encounter carried a hidden thread linking their pasts in ways he could not yet comprehend. Sitting beside Lila in the back of the ambulance, Adrian felt a quiet determination settle over him. No deal, no fortune, no empire could ever compare to the responsibility he now held. And as the city passed in a blur outside, he knew this was the moment that would redefine his life, teaching him lessons that money and power could never buy. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet anticipation, a stark contrast to the chaos that had consumed Adrian's thoughts just moments before. Lila sat on the edge of the ambulance seat, her small frame tense, clutching her bracelet as if it were a shield against the uncertainty ahead. Adrian placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, feeling the weight of her trust and the unspoken expectation that he would not let them down. The medical staff moved swiftly, guiding Lila gently toward the waiting room as Adrian followed closely, keeping a careful eye on her every step. Each moment stretched with a strange mix of fear and hope, the kind that made the heart beat faster than logic allowed. He had faced impossible odds in his career, but nothing compared to the fragility of a child depending entirely on him. Sitting beside Lila, Adrian tried to bridge the silence. "Your mom is strong," he said softly, "and now she has you and help to lean on. That's a lot of courage, you know?" Lila's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she managed a small, hopeful nod. It was then Adrian realized that bravery wasn't just about facing giants in the boardroom. Sometimes, it was about staying present when the world felt like it was breaking. Minutes felt like hours as they waited. Adrian's mind wandered, piecing together fragments of memory and intuition, sensing that this meeting was no coincidence. Lila's resilience stirred something deep within him, a long-dormant awareness that life's most important victories weren't measured by numbers, contracts, or power, but by the impact one could have on the lives of others. And in that sterile, softly lit room, Adrian silently vowed to protect and guide Lila through whatever came next, knowing this moment had already begun to change him forever. The waiting room felt both endless and fleeting, a paradox Adrian had never experienced. Lila's small hand rested in his, her grip tighter with every passing second. The hum of hospital machinery and distant footsteps created a rhythm that seemed to echo the rapid beating of his own heart. He watched her, marveling at how someone so tiny could hold such strength, and he felt a profound sense of responsibility settle over him, one that no business deal or fortune had ever demanded. When a doctor finally appeared, her calm demeanor brought a rush of relief. "She's stable," the doctor said, "and will need rest, but she's going to be okay." Lila's shoulders relaxed and a smile, shy but genuine, broke across her face. Adrian felt an unfamiliar warmth rise in his chest, a mix of relief, gratitude, and awe at the child who had brought him here. As they walked toward the recovery room, Adrian realized that this day had changed everything. He had entered thinking of a quiet escape, but instead, he had discovered the depth of human connection, the raw power of trust, and the unspoken lessons of courage. Lila looked up at him, her wide eyes shining, and whispered, "Thank you for staying." Adrian smiled, a rare, unguarded smile. "I'll always be here for you," he promised. And in that moment he understood that true influence wasn't built through wealth or control. It was built through compassion, presence, and the willingness to step forward when it mattered most. The bond between them was unspoken, yet undeniable, and as they watched the sunlight spill across the hospital corridor, Adrian knew his life, and Lila's, would never be the same again. This was more than a rescue, it was a beginning, a reminder that even the smallest voices could awaken the greatest hearts.